the Apennine Mountains between the Adriatic Sea and Rome, across the viaducts and through the tunnels of the Autostrada spanning Italy from east to west, a new kind of car overtakes the traffic. It is fast, dynamic, distinctive. It's the new Mercedes 190. The 190 looks more compact than other Mercedes, and it is. The 190 is also quick and thrifty. The injection version will do 120 miles an hour, plus the fuel economy to cruise for more than 30 miles to every gallon of petrol. The new 190 has all the care and quality built into it that drivers the whole world over have come to expect from the three-pointed star. It is every inch a true Mercedes. Mercedes-Benz have a special interest in this spectacular stretch of motorway running over the rocky spine of Italy, for it was here that a famous Mercedes sports car made motoring history in 1955. In these mountains, on the ancient Via Tabelnia, then the only way from Pescara to Rome, a Mercedes 300 SLR Silver Arrow won that unique motor racing classic, the Mille Miglia. The man who won the Mille Miglia for Mercedes was Stirling Moss. He's been back to the scene of his great triumph, this time at the wheel of the new Mercedes 190, in design and engineering, a worthy successor to the racing Mercedes which he drove victoriously 1,000 miles from Brescia to Rome and back.
I can remember people sitting on the side, on the banks, whether it was here or whether it was the Futa or the Redicoffany, I don't know. But I can remember very much because the Italians would turn out literally in their millions and would sit there waving you on and doing, you know, the typical Italian gestures and so on, trying to get you to go so fast you'd have a shunt, I suppose.
Team manager Alfred Neubauer watches Juan Fangio take a Mercedes up to the starting point of perhaps the greatest international road race of them all, the Mille Miglia. Another Mercedes in the German team with English ace Stirling Moss at the wheel. And a third is driven by Carl Kling. Ahead of them are 1,000 miles of some of the toughest racing in the world right across Italy. And here comes Moss well out in front with the leaders. And Fangio is there too, followed by Italian Umberto Maglioli in a Ferrari. At the finish, just over 10 hours later, it's Moss who crosses the line to win in record time. Fangio comes second and Maglioli third, making Moss the first British driver ever to win this famous race.
Stirling Moss averaged over 98 miles an hour, a feat never equalled before or since. In fact, his victory was a near certainty before he reached the medieval city of Siena. The very fast main road from Rome through the vineyards of Tuscany allowed his Mercedes to peak at over 170 miles an hour, and the Ferrari and Maserati opposition could not stand the pace. Today, Moss, Mercedes and the Mille Miglia are warmly remembered in Siena. So while Stirling tried out the new 190E on the open roads outside the city, actress and columnist Joanna Lumley drove the automatic version round the narrow streets inside the city walls to see how the car performs in the congested world of urban motoring.
It's difficult to think of a more suitable place to try out a new car than Siena in Tuscany. It lies on the route of the old Mille Miglia, which Stirling Moss won so convincingly for Mercedes. And it's a wonderful medieval city, filled with all the hazards of nightmarish city driving nowadays. Narrow streets, impossible places to park, crammed with tourists. So here we are in the very heart of Siena, the Piazza del Campo, where every year they run the oldest horse race in the world, the Palio di Siena, watched by hundreds and thousands of tourists. What could be a better place to try out a different kind of horsepower with the 190? I was very impressed by its maneuverability. It handles terribly lightly. The streets were filled with people, crammed with cars, and very strange sort of people pushing barrows and so on. Narrow corners, the road suddenly getting tighter, suddenly turning very sharply. And it handled like a kitten. It skipped along. Power steering, enormously important. I found I had a small car once which drove like a truck, and I used to get exhausted and very hot and therefore very angry trying to park. Particularly if you live in the city, which I do, although not quite as tightly built as Sienna. You have to spend all your life parking and trying to find tiny spots and get into them. And a good lock is important for parking. And also for doing illegalish things, like doing U-turns, which I spend my life doing. So this has got one of the tightest locks I think I've felt in a car. I like a functional feeling about a car, but on the other hand, I'm a bit of a hedonist. Being a tourist, I do love a bit of luxury. And so although it's got to be fairly simple and dutiful, it's also got to be comfortable. This is comfortable, actually. It really is. I found that going on from quite tight city driving to long, quickish motorway driving, it's very good indeed. The qualities I look for in a car, first of all, reliability. I've got to know that I'm going to get there when I say I'm going to be there. If it's a 2 o'clock appointment, I can't afford to be a single minute late. And with a Mercedes, at least we can take that for granted. The second thing is visibility. I think that visibility is really almost #1 on my list of priorities. I have to know who's coming on each side of me and behind me. This is good wing mirrors, nice clear back window. Third is parkability. Strange word, but that's in fact what I spend most of my life doing, parking a car. It's got to have a very good lock, and this one's got a terribly tight turning circle, really remarkable, because it is a compact car, but it isn't absolutely tiny, and yet I feel I could get into quite a constricted space with comfort. It's not a cheap car. The thing that impresses me is that they haven't cut back on any of the essential qualities of Mercedes. It is smaller, it's more compact. I can see a lot of young professional people driving this car. People who have stopped trying to impress people with the sort of car they drive, not trying to make a statement about themselves. Simply need a car to rely on, which gets them about, which is a real gur, which this one is. I don't drive like Sterling Moss, but even at the reasonable speeds I do in England, I find that with the decreasing surfaces of the road, really you can have quite a bumpy ride. This goes beautifully, smooth as a French double bed, which is rather a rude way of saying it's extremely nice. The other thing I like about it is that there's very little to distract you. You haven't got any crazy ideas about sort of talking computers and things. There's all the bits and pieces, lights and so on the right-hand side on this lever. Clear clocks, rev counters, petrol signals, all there. Just you need about the sort of heating and stuff, and that's it. No more tricks, nothing to distract the driver. I always had the impression that Mercedes were not modest drinkers of petrol. When I heard that this one had come down from, well, it's done over 2,000 miles from somewhere like Stuttgart or London or wherever it came from, loaded with 2 men and a lot of heavy equipment and stuff, and had averaged well over 30 miles to the gallon, I think that was stunning, because I always thought they were about 18, 20. Fuel economy is terribly important. Being a great conservationist by nature, the world's resources are running out. I can't bear the thought of cars drinking up more petrol than they need. And also being slightly idle, I can't stand stopping for petrol more than I have
to. Low fuel consumption combined with a lively performance usually is a contradiction in cars. Not so with the new Mercedes 190. It achieves both, thanks to a robust but lightweight body, a highly efficient 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, and most important of all, a shape and a profile which is the last word in aerodynamics. The 190's rear quarters illustrate the low wind resistance very well indeed. The wings are drawn in, the rear roofline low, doors and windows are flush to the bodywork to smooth the airflow. The absence of chrome improves long life appearance, and the large single windscreen wiper is recessed to improve visibility and to further the aerodynamic profile. Aerodynamic hubcaps also reduce drag, and the deformable bumpers have an apron beneath, which also cuts down lift and wind resistance. A long wheelbase not only improves handling, it provides for 4 wide-opening doors and more leg and headroom, front and back, than is normally possible within the limits of a compact car. There are 7 interior colors to choose from, and no less than 26 colors available for exterior finish. The 190's multi-link rear suspension is a major technical breakthrough. It provides superb comfort, a smooth ride whatever the load, and above all else, impeccable handling, as Joanna Lumley found out for herself.
Their engineers have been very clever in shaping all the traditional qualities of the larger saloons into something smaller, livelier, less expensive, and in my opinion, a lot more practical for the kind of congested motoring most of us have to endure nowadays. As for the 190's performance and get up and go, who better to pass judgment on that than Sterling Moss? Here in Italy, he won one of the world's greatest road races, the Mille Miglia, when he was only 25, the only Englishman to do so, and he won it in a Mercedes. Is this new Mercedes also a winner? Let's hear from the man who knows all about cars and what makes them tick. Sterling.
Thanks, Joanna. Well, that was a long time ago in 1955, and the roads have changed a lot since then, and of course they're terribly crowded. And no way can I cover 1,000 miles, but I would like to try the new 190 over some of the more difficult sections. So let's go and have a go, okay? When I get in the car, I feel it's smaller than other Mercedes, but then I've always looked upon Mercedes as being large cars. I think it handles in a small fashion. It's maneuverable and it's easy to throw around. So I think in that way they've come quite a long distance. Actually, the gearbox is very nice. So I think in many ways they have succeeded. But in the overall thing, I don't feel that it's a small car in any way because there's a lot of room inside after all. I think the new rear suspension is stunning, quite honestly. Presuming that is the main reason why the car feels so nice and it handles so well and stays so flat and it doesn't lurch around. I think it is a very, very impressive development, actually. I think it is quite revolutionary. I think it's as good as I'd heard, and for that reason, I think they have succeeded, yes. On these hairpins, the car is extremely maneuverable. The steering is very light, it's positive, and it's another of the good features. I think it's a very definite type of steering. When you place it, you feel the car's going to go there, and it's going there there's no feedback. It is a very nice steering. I think a car with a decent gearbox and good brakes are absolutely essential. And hopefully one looks to a car that's going to be good in the wet, because it's 50% of the time you're driving in England seems to be wet, and therefore I think it's quite important that one doesn't get brakes locking up, or shall we say the front end understeering and so on. And I think in many ways the Mercedes has got a long way towards that, particularly if you have the ABS brakes, which are absolutely revolutionary. I mean, when I was racing, we had the equivalent of the ABS available, but we didn't use them because they weren't at that time, I think, developed that far. But now, if you've ever driven ABS, I mean, one has to be a fan of them, and they are absolutely remarkable, because you can take one wheel, put it on the side, on the loose, if you like, or something, and yet still stop without the car swerving everywhere. I think that's an enormous benefit towards safety, actually.
It was here, on the descent from the village of Radicofani between Rome and Siena, that Moss nearly came to grief on the Mille Miglia. With only some 4 hours of the race to go, he spun on a sharp left-hander, but managed to drive out of the ditch with the same sure hand he shows at Radicofani today at the wheel of the new 190. Why did Sterling's Mercedes outperform 450 other cars on the 22nd Mille Miglia?
I would say it was two things. One is the feeling that this car was going to finish. Unless you went off the road, you should finish the race. That's number one, and that's a great feeling of security. I think the other one probably was because I had Dennis Jenkinson beside me, and I had great feeling of confidence in what he was telling me, and I had obviously a similar type of confidence in that I knew how to interpret everything that he indicated. And I think, you see, coming over a brow like that, very, very difficult if you're going really fast. And when you go down the dump like this is easy. Now I go down and I know the road is fairly clear ahead because I've seen what it's like, go slightly left and then to the right. So I'm not worried, although he would give me a signal for this being flat out, I wouldn't worry. But when I haven't seen what's there, then the fact that Dennis would give me the sort of signal like this, that means flat out, let's go. That gave me a tremendous help.
On the Futa Pass, the memorial to the father of the Mille Miglia, Count Mazzotti. Moss made a short stop here on his 190 appraisal run and looked back to another hot summer's day when there was no time at all for food or drink, or anything else for that matter.
We were going 10 hours, 7 minutes, I think, and we actually stopped for a total of 1 minute, 28 seconds. One quick stop to bung in, I think, 20 gallons of fuel before Rome, after Pescara, just as a top-up. And then at Rome, of course, I had decided I'd have a pee in Rome. Well, when I arrived at the control, they built grandstands. Well, frankly, I then had to go behind, and by the time I came back, they'd refueled the car, changed the tires, put the oil, done everything, washed the windscreen, and they were ready to go.
Moss and his Mercedes 190 had one more pass to navigate on his return visit to the route of the Mille Miglia, the Raticosa. On the original race day, a hot Sunday afternoon in May, Moss came down the Raticosa in a series of controlled slides on patches of melting tar coated with oil and rubber from other competitors. He wanted to cover the 60 miles of hills and villages between Florence and Bologna in 60 minutes. In the event, it took him just 1 minute more. Mantova was the final checkpoint before the finish in Brescia. On the home straight, a dead-flat run across the plain of Lombardy, Moss broke all records, and he was given a special Nuvolari Award, named after the veteran Italian racing driver whose skill and courage are remembered in his hometown of Mantova to this day.
They gave a very nice fob, amongst other things, which has got the tortoise, because his symbol was a tortoise with TN, Tazio Nuvolari, on it, which I still have and treasure very much. But the run in here, of course, was very, very fast. I mean, we'd been doing slow sections. It was quite a relief after about 7 or 8 hours to be able to relax a bit and go really quickly. And I think we averaged about 130 miles an hour from Cremona home. And I remember at one time, there was a twin-engine aircraft, and we actually pulled away from the thing and passed it, and it would only catch up when the road turned, and it was able to take a shortcut.
The famous Mille Miglia, the 1,000-mile classic car race in Italy, was a triumph for Sterling Moss, the British ace. Driving a 3-litre Mercedes from Brescia, down the coast, across to Rome and north again, he went like the wind all the way. But miles ahead, on his way to victory, Sterling Moss was breaking the record average speed for the event by nearly 10 miles an hour. And he finished over half an hour ahead of world champion Fangio. The first Briton to win this race, Moss had scored a supreme triumph.
At the time, I was obviously thrilled, but since then, it's sunk in more that, you know, what the event was, because there's nothing like it left in the world. I mean, a real road race, and the speeds we were doing, and the type of atmosphere, and the character of the car and the road and everything. I think it really is probably my greatest achievement, actually.
In terms of achievements, the Mercedes 190 of today shares many qualities with the Mercedes 300 SLR, which Moss drove to victory. It is the ultimate in vehicle design for a specific purpose. No compromise, a totally new concept in light, compact cars. And it inherits the expertise of all those Mercedes research and development engineers who've contributed not only to the Mille Miglia, but to countless other great sporting triumphs. Sterling Moss knows this better than anyone.
Well, let me put it this way. If there was a race being held now, today, I reckon the 190 would suit me very nicely. Super handling car, and quick enough for what I want anyway.